Welcome to Talking Early Years, a showcase training podcast with Ellen Roberts
and Gemma Carr.
Hello everyone and welcome to today's Talking Early Years podcast. In this episode we're going to be discussing all things consent and healthy relationships and what these look like. So let's delve in. Hi Gemma, how are you?
Very well, thank you, Ellen. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. So what are we talking about today? What is consent?
So consent is the fundamental concept that signifies an agreement or permission for something to happen. It's crucial in various contexts, especially in relationships, sexual activity and personal boundaries.
Ooh, so something a little bit different for our safeguarding short today then. So looking actually quite specifically into a particular aspect of safeguarding, very topical at the moment as well. It's something that I think we all know about, and we all know the boundaries of what we expect and what we don't expect. But what people end up actually in practice accepting and not accepting, or doing and not doing, is very different. And healthy relationships is a topic that some people shy away from a little bit. They get a little bit nervous about and a little bit shy perhaps. But here at Showcase, we don't shy away from any of these things.
Nothing at all, thank you.
Everything's open and honest in our office. And yeah, absolutely right. In our healthy relationships, consent is an ongoing, what we call an enthusiastic yes. We did have a discussion about enthusiastic yes in our latest team meeting, in that it is a yes with a nod and a, not a maybe if you want, sure can be. It is an enthusiastic. It does not count. And importantly, consent can be withdrawn at any time. Just because you've given consent to something once doesn't mean that that's always the case. You must check every single time. As you say, it's not just sexual activity. It is all about your partner feeling safe, respected, comfortable, even during things like disagreements, and having arguments. Healthy relationships and consent is about making sure that that person is comfortable with their environment and making sure that they feel safe, and that as a partner is the least that you can do for your significant other, whether that's a relationship, a romantic relationship, or even just as a friendship, work colleague, whatever it might be.
Parents.
Absolutely, definitely.
Christmas is coming up. There's going to be, what are we doing for Christmas? When are we doing it? What's happening yet? All those things are going to start coming in as well.
Where are we doing Christmas Day? Well, it gets tricky. Absolutely. So, and one of the definitions that I read online yesterday is consent is the foundation of healthy relationships built on continuous communication, mutual respect and clear boundaries, which sounds a very, very similar thing to our British values, funny enough. We're talking about very similar things.
Is there any legislation around consent then, Ellen?
Directly and explicitly, no.
Okay.
However, it does fall into different aspects of legislation. So, for example, the Sexual Offences Act of 2003 looks at consent and freedom and the capacity to make a choice. So that's where there's arguments potentially in cases of rape, for example, about whether consent was given freely, openly, enthusiastically, honestly. So it does fall into that kind of category sometimes. It can also go into the Children's Act of 1989 and 2004 in terms of protection from harm, including sexual abuse and domestic abuse. And of course, our Domestic Abuse Act of 2021, in which it relates into child safeguarding as well, because a child is deemed a victim of abuse if they are witness or in a household with domestic abuse, not just the perpetrators and victims there. So whilst there isn't a particular law as such that is all about consent and healthy relationships, a lot of the pieces of legislation that we continually talk about within our safeguarding topics cover different elements of consent and healthy relationships, particularly within our sex education.
Do you think that there will we said it's a very topical conversation at the moment. There's been an awful lot in the news about consent in large cases. The Giselle Pellicot's case springs to mind when we talk about consent. But do you think there will be a legislation specifically around it coming?
Very difficult. And I think largely because it's very difficult to police. The consent to one person will mean something very different to another person. It's, for me, a slightly different scale and different topic, but similar to hitting children and the argument for punishment for children. You are reliant on somebody's interpretation of what fair and balanced is, and to police it is very difficult. There's always been the argument in England and Wales that obviously smacking children, a complete separate topic, but it's obviously banned in Scotland, Northern Ireland, and there's calls to ban it in England and Wales as well. And one of the main arguments of that is that it's difficult to police and people interpret the law very differently. And I think consent comes into that as well. My personal view is absolutely, first of all, on the smacking side, it should be banned. I mean, it's completely outrageous that we're sat in 2025 and that's still allowed. However, on the consent side, it's a very difficult thing that I believe personally there needs to be more legislation around consequences for unhealthy relationships. So whether that's coercive control, and the Domestic Abuse Act does go some way to start to address some of these concerns. It was definitely a welcome bill in Parliament, obviously 4 years ago now, but especially with the online landscape changing so much, I just feel like there needs to be a more up-to-date and more robust piece of legislation in place. What that looks like, I have absolutely no idea. I must say, I'm not a policy maker. However, it's surprising to me that we are sat here in 2025 with it being such a topical conversation starter, that there isn't a piece of legislation that directly deals with the issue of consent, considering that this issue has been around for ever. It's been around for a long time. Of course. So in practice, with regards to healthy relationships and consent, how do you practice it in day to day?
So I think it's really important, again, bringing it into your everyday. Like, this isn't just in a sexual situation, which often you kind of jump to, can't you? But it can, like we've said, it can be on those personal relationships and in any relationship. So any healthy relationship. So asking clearly, are you comfortable with this, or is this okay? Are you happy if we do that? Giving that person the option to opt out if they want to. Checking in regularly. So regularly having those check-ins, especially during those intimate moments as well. So people's comfort can change within an instant. So I was kind of caught up in the moment and I was okay with that. But actually what you're doing now is taking it too far and I'm not okay with that. Or actually like we said, the environment could change. Anything could change. You're in a safe space, whatever. Something could change and that's all of a sudden that's not okay. And that is that.
Absolutely.
Respecting that answer. So whatever you hear back from the person, that's respecting that. And if it's anything less than a clear yes and that enthusiastic yes, then it means stop. No, I don't want that.
Absolutely.
And then again, educating yourself. So learning about boundaries, communication, and the laws around that sexual consent in the UK as well. So be proactive for yourself, educating ways for you to do that, or terminology maybe you could use, or have scenarios so that you're kind of ready for it if it happens or anything like that as well.
Absolutely. It takes quite a lot of confidence sometimes to say no or to talk about these things. So on both sides of the coin, somebody that is perhaps leading a relationship and perhaps instigating certain things, being mindful that your partner might not want to do certain things and making sure you are proactive in asking consent. As you say, in the absence of a yes, it's a no. And if somebody is they need to give you consent. Same with things like GDPR. You have to opt in. It is not it's an opt in unless you tell me otherwise. They must opt into it. But also on the other side, if you are somebody that is not comfortable with something or wants to talk about it, you need to develop those skills, and it is a skill to develop in yourself, that confidence to be able to talk about it. We spoke earlier about having conversations in early years about sex education and about normalizing certain language. When we get to sort of teenage and adulthood, sometimes we go back into ourselves again and stop talking about these things, and fear of rejection, fear of not being wanted by somebody or loved, or distancing yourself from somebody. But ultimately, that communication will make that relationship stronger longer term, and it's really important that people have the confidence to learn those communication skills early on.
Definitely. So thinking risks around it, risks around consent, and kind of that healthy or unhealthy relationships.
So we come into the area of safeguarding with regards to abuse. So a key risk in an unhealthy relationship and not having consent for things is things like physical, sexual and emotional abuse, including things like coercive control. So being controlled by a partner or a significant other in a relationship, including things like financial abuse and domestic abuse. So that abuse side of things and violence is a key concern in an unhealthy relationship. Both understanding what constitutes abuse, both as a perpetrator and as a victim. So something that we do talk about in our world of showcase training is about recognizing it in yourself if you are the abuser, because sometimes people don't recognize those boundaries. If they've grown up with an environment where actually we go back to hitting children and that's normal, they don't see that as an issue. However, in educating ourselves about what's healthy and unhealthy, we can start to change those generational norms as well. We have a risk at the moment, especially with, we mentioned it earlier, the online landscape and online relationships. Again, this isn't actually massively new. I remember being a teenager, a few years ago myself, but and that was a risk then when we were growing up, Jo. But things like grooming scams, financial scams online, catfishing, those are a landscape of unhealthy relationships that people don't often talk about. It is a little bit taboo. People get very embarrassed about it, understandably. However, as we said at the start of the conversation, no topic is off bounds for us. We like to talk about it because the more you talk about it, the more you can learn about safeguarding yourself and what to do if you do fall victim. Also online, something that I think isn't talked about very much is sharing nudes and semi-nudes. So commonly known as dick pics or whatever it might be. It is defined as sending or posting nude or semi-nude images. It includes things like videos and live streams, and it's anything that's posted online. And we fall into a difficult world when we post things online. They do not disappear. If you are posting it on Snapchat, believe me, it doesn't just fall into the ether and get deleted. It is still there. As if you put it on the internet, your image is out there forever. And importantly, for people under the age of 18, not 16, under the age of 18, nudes and semi-nudes are illegal to view, to share. So whether you are sharing your own or whether you are sharing that of somebody else, it is illegal activity and it falls under child on child abuse. So it's incredibly important to know and understand where those boundaries are. If you are older than 18, it is up to you whether you post something online or not. However, there is a risk, especially with AI, and we've seen it in the news about people having their images taken and put on certain websites, or their face being transposed onto other people's bodies, for example, in certain videos, that can then be shared on things like gaming platforms, social media, chat apps, porn websites, those kind of things. So be very careful with what you share online, not only from a legal aspect, but from a safeguarding aspect for both children and adults. alike. So in early years, what does consent and healthy relationships look like? What does it mean?
So I think for me, it's always an element of role modelling between you and the team, and role modelling between you and the children, and kind of them seeing what those healthy relationships looks like. You talking to one another politely, professionally, not shouting across the room to one another, or using poor language, even those sorts of things. Or again, if and thinking about asking the children before we're doing things, especially when we're talking nappies.
Yes. Absolutely.
So, are we okay to do nappy? We'll in 2 minutes. I'm going to do a nappy. Is that okay? Yep. Or nope. And thinking about how we are talking to those children about those things. We're just your jumper's a bit wet. Are you okay if I take that off and we can pop a new one on? Even just things like that. That in years gone past, you just whip it off, stick it back on. And actually, we need to be talking to the children through that. If nothing else, if someone came up behind you and whipped your jumper off, you would not have a clue what's going on. Let alone the consent and that healthy relationship element. If you start thinking it's okay for people just to come up and whip my jumper off.
Absolutely.
No, it's not.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really important point, actually. In early, it starts those foundational knowledge of what a healthy relationship is and the benefits of that healthy relationship. We talk about quite often on these the pitfalls of unhealthy relationships and the kind of bad side of things. But it's also really important to highlight the power of a healthy relationship in that you have emotional support and stability between either you and your partner, or the child and yourself. It helps self-esteem, it helps your confidence, trust, communication, your personal growth as an individual in terms of self-improvement and space to explore new ideas, new hobbies. There are so many benefits to having a healthy relationship. It's not all about the negative, and safeguarding does sometimes have that kind of negativity bias around it. But actually, if we can foster and harness the power of those healthy relationships, we can turn it into something good. So even if there is elements of an unhealthy relationship and we've identified it, we can overcome that. There's learning that people can do and self-reflection that you can do to better that. If ultimately the person that you're with isn't prepared to, then you walk away, and it's about having your own personal boundaries and what values you hold close to you, and understanding what you expect out of something from somebody else.
And I think all of those things you just discussed there kind of relate very well into attachment theory as well. And kind of building on that attachment theory, your safe place is those people around you who are safe, and building up all of those things within you for the positive all come through into your attachment theories as well.
Very, very interesting. So in terms of healthy relationships, advice and support, particularly if somebody is in an unhealthy relationship or is worried that they might be, where can they go for some advice and support?
So there is quite a lot of support out there. There is Rape Crisis UK, which has some great information and useful resources, including help for support for victims. We also have blogs and other podcasts about healthy relationships, and also we have our Nookie Knowledge newsletter blog posts as well that we have.
Absolutely, and thank you very much for highlighting that as well, because our website, we do have a huge amount of resources on healthy relationships. They are completely free for everybody to view. It doesn't matter if you're a learner with us or just somebody interested in this aspect. You just simply go to resources, personal development, and then either into Nookie Knowledge or healthy relationships, either or, and you can see all of our blog posts on those topics, so whether they're current or previous. And we have things on there like what to do if you are worried about a relationship, advice to male and female learners on both sides, advice for parents as well of teenagers, especially if your teenager is having their first relationships, what advice there is to you as well. So do check them out. Don't forget, you've got things like your local GP and counsellors for there may be mental health support that you might need as well in that respect. But also, of course, our failsafe is our NSPCC. They are such a fantastic organisation. Absolutely brilliant for advice and support. They have a whole new section actually about healthy relationships, especially aimed at teenagers. Brilliant stuff. So thank you ever so much, everybody, for tuning in again today. As always, safeguarding is such a massive topic, but if you've got any concerns, you can reach out to your settings DSL or to Showcase Training Safeguarding Lead, which is myself, or of course to your local MASH or LADO.
So don't forget to like, share and follow this podcast to stay updated. And as always, let's keep the conversation going about early years. Until next time, take care and keep making a difference.